At what point do we give people the left hand of fellowship?
Welcome to the Vlogpastors Podcast, a podcast all about the stories and strategies of sharing God's love in the digital world. Now, here are two pastors that love to put a camera in their face and walk around in public. They are the Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble of digital ministry, JARROD Brown and Joshua Verwers.
Welcome to the Vlogpastors Podcast. I am Joshua Verwers.
And I'm JARROD Brown, and this is episode 57.
And whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, or you happen to be watching the replay right here on YouTube or over on Spotify, thanks for being with us. You can join us live when we record this, so yeah, something like that.
Something like that. You can influence the conversation every Wednesday morning, 10:30 a.m. Central.
And on today's episode, we're actually going to be answering a multifaceted, JARROD Brown-esque question that came from none other than Dean Lentini. And he said, I would love to hear y'all's wisdom on cultivating community, knowing when to block, how transparent to be with folks, keeping people engaged, etc. And so that's what we're talking at. And actually, I think I'd even messed up on the hook because Dean is correcting me and he's saying, but I'm right-handed. Is it right-handed hand of fellowship, or is it the left-handed?
No, it's the left hand of fellowship, isn't it?
Okay. So, and he says, and is there a difference between how you deal with people in Pews versus people in the chat? See, he knows where we were going with this. He saw. Okay, so I think there are like you're used to, JARROD, there are 5 questions.
Yes.
Inside
I love how this is
of
a bit with us. I just feel like this is one question.
One question. For those that don't know what we're talking about, you can check out, even Vlogpastors YouTube channel. You go there. We've got playlist of all of the previous seasons of the Vlogpastors series that we've done. And this is kind of an ongoing thing where we ask each other questions back and forth. However, every time that JARROD tries to ask a question, he can't ask.
He does.
No. You don't ask a question. You ask questions.
Listen, why waste the airtime? If I ask you a silly question, I can pad it with 2 or 3 other questions in there that I'm curious about, and probably other people are curious about as well. It's not my fault that I batch record questions for you.
I'm going to give you one good reason as to why you shouldn't ask multifaceted questions.
Why?
Searchability and discoverability.
Oh, YouTube. But that's not human. And we're learning that it's not all about search results, isn't it?
This is true.
It's about the human factor. And Dean, I hear you, my friend. 5 layers deep in this question. He's really got, I feel like a heart, because here's what I do. When I'm asking that question, in that sauce, somewhere is the heart of the question. I think it's in there.
It definitely is there. I think it's in there, and that's where, we put the title on this episode of Blocking Comments, Building Community. And so I tried to look at what he was saying, okay, so about cultivating community, about when to block people, how transparent to be with folks, keeping people engaged. And, of course, because we're vlog pastors, it's not just the vlogging aspect of it, it's the pastoral aspect of it. It's like, how does this look like in person versus online? And I think maybe the best way for us to have some type of a format to this is we'll just go through these one by one. Okay. Let's bounce back and forth. But as we address it, let's address it in both digital and physical.
Okay.
All right. So the first one.
The first one is?
What wisdom do you have on cultivating community?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. And to answer, all I can do is draw upon the ones who have gone before me. In particular, for me, I would say, we're all trying to look to Jesus to see how he formulated community, because you're looking at somebody who has existed forever, eternally, in 3 unique persons, but one big, that whole Trinity thing, and has never gotten bored with himself or frustrated that we know of, or, but has been in constant and continual connection and joy with himself. So, with that being the ultimate, and he's established a place in heaven that is that he's mentioning that we're moving towards, of intimacy, of light, of love, of life, of connection, then I think we have to look to him, and I think we have to look to what he was trying to establish here on the earth with authenticity, just extreme authenticity, and then just model that as best we can. And that's kind of where you've seen the different factions over the years. I think if we said it's as easy as look to Jesus, I think we would all be on the same page, moving in one direction. But it's kind of interpreted through all of our different systems and filters and that sort of thing. So Dean, if I was to answer you directly, I obviously I would say look to Jesus and what the scriptures tell us as far as forming community. I personally think he is the rawest, realest cat on the block. We have secrets. He doesn't. If you've ever noticed, like, we could go into a place where he is, and he has a way of searching out those hidden recesses of our soul. And that's not really acceptable in our human relationships. There's certain things that we don't want one another to know, or we sometimes deem inappropriate, to share with certain folks. But God doesn't seem to respect those boundaries all the time. He tells you things. I mean, there are things probably going on in your life and in my life right now that we're completely unaware of. He just hasn't addressed yet. But at his timing and his choosing, he's going to address it because he has the relationship to do so. And I think as much as we can model that in real time with other people, I think it builds community. I think being in connection, walking in step with Holy Spirit and saying the things that he tells us to say or do the things he tells us to do in boldness, I think that builds something. It's attractive. I know that it's attractive because if I take it one layer down from Jesus, and I put it in my immediate relationships or mentorships, and it's like I can see it in Pastor Dave. Pastor David has built a community over, he's a 70-year-old man, 71-year-old man at this point, but since he was 16, chasing after the Lord, those faces have changed. They've all cycled through. I would say the majority of those tight relationships have gone off into ministry and have gone out into the world and done different things, established their own community influences. But the common thread in his world has been walking a life of integrity and dependence upon Jesus. And so when God tells him to do, say, whatever, be refined, rebuked, whatever it is, he does that in the open. And that is attractive. Yeah. It's rallied people like myself and the elders and whoever, men and women of faith who want to see what it's like to walk that out, want to be a part of a journey like that with Jesus and grow in that way. And it's bonded us together because we have had over the course, I can just speak for the last 15 years or so, I think is how long I've known him. We have fought. We have called out issues. We have sought the Lord. We have encouraged. We have been there when no one else would. We have, you name it, from the mountaintops to the valley low, we have been there with one another. And I think that's that God breathing life into a people who are committed to follow after him at all costs together. I think that's something special. And I think it originates, to kind of, Dean, to answer you directly, I think it originates in a life willing that God would do whatever he wants to do in them. What do you think, Josh?
The authenticity, honestly, is probably, if I were to summarize my point, essentially everything you're saying, yes, and amen. I think about the ones in my own life. You're talking about Dave and how there are those people that they're just real. Yeah. And they're authentic. They're genuine to who they are. That's what Jesus was. Like, nobody had to guess where he was coming from, what his agenda was. Yeah. Like, you knew he was very vocal. He's like, this is what I'm about. Like, even when you think about Billy Graham, okay, I don't think anybody could question that he's the greatest evangelist in modern day history. Definitely in that. He was referred to as America's pastor. That guy was in presidential offices, every single president inviting him in, all of media, late night talk shows, they're bringing him on, they're talking to him, people trying to mock him. trying to trip him up, and never once did he shy away. It was just like, no, this is what I do, and this is who I am. And if you don't like it, that's on you. Like there's a boldness that comes with knowing who you are, what you're called to do, and just being authentic in that. And what that creates is an attraction that people want to be near it. Mm-hmm. Because so much of this world that we have is all about getting you to be somebody else and like a perfect image of what the world thinks is perfect. And yet everything that God's like is like, no, we actually have the best image, and here it is. And so when we see somebody that is just bold and they're just outspoken in their faith, they're authentic in how they communicate and what they do, it's attractive. Like it does draw people in. And so that's one that I mean, if I were to try to summarize it, what's the wisdom of cultivating community? What would I do? What would I suggest? Be you.
Yeah.
Like just be you. Jesus wasn't pushed around. Like he's the perfect example of it. He didn't change who he was or what he was doing for anybody. And even when you start to read through the epistles, you see that's one of the biggest contentions that happened between Paul and Peter was stop trying to be somebody that you're not. Stop trying to cave into what other people want. Be who God called you to be and just be bold in that, and they'll either follow or they won't. And so that's, I think, the thing with cultivating community, whether it's physical or it's digital, the wisdom that I would have, what I've seen is I'm just going to be me. And if people like it and they want to follow with it, great. I'm not going to, let them think that I'm going in a different direction than I am. I mean, you can even look back on my own channel and what I've done here, and then even on the other aspects of the different platforms I've done. We were talking about it in the pre-show, how it's just like that, stay blessed, enjoy God's best. That's something I've said. And from day one, it's been my whole goal is to encourage people to live by faith. And it's like everything I'm doing is about that. That's what I want people to do. Just live by faith. Now, here's how I'm doing it. And if that works for you, let's have fun. Let's follow the ride. Let's enjoy the, being a part of the same community. And if not, okay, find somebody else. I'm not too worried about it. There can be those that follow Paul or Apollos or Cephas and do all that. I mean, ideally, we're all following somebody as they're following Christ, so we're all heading in the same direction. But there are different ministries, different denominations, different YouTubers, different churches, and it's like some of them I can relate with and I can resonate with to the point where it actually does encourage me and build me up. What is Christian community about? Go to Hebrews chapter 10, stirring us up for love and good works. What does Ephesians 4 tell us about the community? What is the work of the body for? It's to edify the body. The work of the ministry is to edify the body, to build them up. If I'm doing that for others, you should probably be here. If I'm not doing that for you, go find somebody else. Because if I'm not providing that stirring, that edification, well, why are you around? And I think the other aspect of that is when it comes to, the wisdom on cultivating community, not just from what I'm doing to try to help, but then the communities that I'm trying to be a part of, is the direction they're headed, the direction I'm headed. Mm-hmm. Are we in step? Are they getting me closer to where God wants me to be? Or is it a slightly different path? Like, obviously, we're all supposed to be reaching Jesus, but there's like all these different nuances and different avenues of how we're getting down there. Different lanes, if you want to say. Like, we're all heading in the same direction, but there's different lanes to be in.
Oh, yeah.
Is this my lane or is it not my lane? So that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of what my thoughts are.
Well, in the church setting, I don't know if you found it to be true, but I want to move faster. And I learned this from YouTube. If I am not that person's, they're not my target audience, they're not who I'm sent here for, then I need them to go find who that is. And I need them to check out of my stuff early, because it just hurts the analytics. It hurts their development later on. They're just going to decide 2 or 3 episodes down the road, they're like, nah, this isn't it. And I've kind of transferred that over to just watching it in church life. It's like, we aren't a good fit.
Right.
We don't need to. extrapolate this out over 6 months and have arguments throughout the time. Listen, we have functioning gift packages here. People are there are certain things that might not line up with what you believe, or what you're coming in. So let's expose you to that early. And if this is like, maybe I misread the situation and you're hooked in, let me know, because this doesn't get less. This only intensifies. I mean,
Right.
I feel like it's a service to say,
Yeah.
listen, maybe we don't fit, and that's okay, because part of it is attractive and part of it is repellent. And I'm just now coming to terms with the repellent part, because in the beginning of, the whole church life, I'm thinking, well, we're going to build not a mega church, but we're building something here, a whosoever will may come. That's not necessarily beneficial to the building process, because as you guys know, we've mentioned a couple of times, when you turn on the light, it attracts a lot of bugs, and you got to be willing to sort through. And same thing, you can call it wolves in sheep's clothing or whatever you want to do, but there's got to be some sort of discretion of weeding out, is there actual growth taking place, or are people blending in and hiding? And we've really seen, we see a lot of newcomers. I don't know why. There's a lot of transient church activity. Maybe we're the Bible Belt. I don't know what it is, but you'll have church hoppers. Mm-hmm. I'm sure no one else has to deal with that. But you'll have church hoppers come in, and they're just shopping around, and they've been kicked out of 2 churches, or they've found several that they don't like and they just don't fit. And it's like, we're the stake in the ground. This is the last rung on the ladder, on the church ladder here in Stephenville. We are known for grace, and we're going to work with you, but like at the same time, swim towards the boat. We're going to be hitting with some hard truths. And anyway, that whole concept of maybe we're not it, but there is somewhere that you are supposed to plug in and plug in and be a part of the body, and that being just as much a part of our authenticity of like, listen, this is who we are. If you don't like it, no shame. We love you. We're going to love you from Cornerstone or wherever you are, from afar.
Yeah.
We're part of the body.
Else.
But this team is an elite unit, and I understand, but you're in or you're out. You either feel the vibe or you don't. We got to go.
Right. Yeah, and you're touching on the second part of the multifaceted question.
See? We're hitting the heart. Yeah. Let's do it.
So you're hitting in on that second part of it, which is about knowing when to block people, which kind of goes into what Dean was asking about. He said, is there a difference between how you deal with people in the pews and how you deal versus with people in the chat? I'll just answer this real quick.
You get so much hate. I don't know whether it's your personality or I don't know, dude. You've got like a beacon out there where people are like.
But for me, no, there's no difference. The way that I treat people in the pews is the exact way that I will treat people in the chat. Like the exact same way. If you've been in my YouTube comment section and you've seen me respond with snark towards somebody, I've used that snark to somebody in my church before. If you've seen me just kick somebody out, block them, I've done that in my church before. I'm the same way with both, and part of that is because I look at ministry, the ministry that God has called me to, as the same ministry, but there are different methods that I'm using to do that ministry, and because there's different methods, there's different audiences. Mm-hmm. But the overall mission is still the same, which John even asked another clarification that kind of goes with this, where he says, maybe it's not an ask a statement, but he says encouraging someone to go somewhere else to let someone be their pastor throws people for a huge loop sometimes. Mm-hmm. And to give an example without giving names away or anything like that, we had a gentleman that was in our church, and we're very kind of upfront and honest about, hey, we're charismatic Pentecostal Word of Faith church. Whatever you think that to be, that's probably pretty accurate.
In the ballpark.
We're pretty much there. Now, I would also say with that, if you look at the most charismatic church, and then we'll use the most Baptist church, we're probably, or the most Pentecostal and the most Baptist, we're probably more in the Baptist-costal range, because it's like, yes, I believe in the gifts. I believe in the manifestations. I believe in the Holy Spirit is operating in for today in all of those things, even the weird things that we can't explain. However, I also believe the scripture that everything should be done in order, and that there is an order and there is a structure to that, to the point that it's like, does it cause confusion? And a perfect example of this is a gentleman that we had where it's like, I'm up preaching the word, and this gentleman wanted to get up in the middle of the church, in the middle of me preaching, and start trying to give a word. And it was like, stop. Like, stop everything immediately. Because what is happening right now are two individuals that are saying the Holy Spirit is speaking through them and giving different messages, and it's causing confusion to those who are hearing. So one of these is obviously not the Holy Spirit. Now, sir, you can think that's me, but unfortunately for you, I actually have biblical authority in this church, so you're going to sit down, you're going to shut up, and you're going to listen, or you're going to get out. And he did. For about 2 more minutes.
I was going to say, which one? Did he sit down?
And then he got up. And then he reared back like he was going to hit me. And I was like, old dude, like, out the door. Right out there. And then he went out. And then to have to come back in, because now I see the confusion on everybody. And to make sure that they understand what just took place, and then to give them the opportunity. Do you feel like I dealt with this wrong? Was there anything I said, anything I did that was confusing to you, or that you're questioning, or that you don't understand? Because the Holy Spirit wants unity. The Holy Spirit wants us to have an understanding of things. If you don't get it, that's fine. And there were a couple questions. Why did this happen? What would you do in this situation, etc.? But then to see them come back into unity. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that same thing is what I will do when somebody hops in the comments section and I see immediately that all they're trying to do is cause confusion and cause division. Go in somebody else's sandbox and play. You're not allowed here. You're not welcome here. Because I will not put up with division. Like, it's not going to happen. If there are questions, because I've had this happen in church too, where somebody has come up and they just asked a question. I don't believe what you said. I disagree with you. Perfect. Let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then in the moment where I've noticed, and here is the example I was going to say, where this gentleman, he just kept saying that I was wrong, but he's not giving me any Bible to back up why I'm wrong. And I keep giving him scripture onto why I believe I'm right. And he's not listening. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. I'm called to be a pastor. I'm to shepherd over you. I'm to watch over you. I'm telling you that there are some things that you're doing that are wrong. I'm showing you scripturally why there are things that you're doing that are wrong, and there's beliefs that you have that are wrong. But all you keep telling me is there's another church that you keep attending during the middle of the week and you believe that pastor, but you won't actually give me any Bible to back up what you believe. Just he says this. So, do you see me as your pastor or not? And are you willing to actually listen to the counsel I'm giving you and submit to the authority that I have in this church or not? No. Okay, then go somewhere else. You shouldn't be here. Like, you have to leave. Like, it's for your benefit that you leave, because you have to have that submission and authority. You've got to be submitted to somebody that has authority in your life to speak over you, to call you on those things. And in this church, that's the pastor. If you don't like that, go somewhere else. Find that person. But you've obviously said that's not me. Yeah. So you need to go. And that's where, even with YouTube, I've had some of that, or on social media, where somebody will send me a message and they're like, hey, I just disagree with what you're saying. I'm like, cool. Like, you're not the people that are supposed to be following me then. Go follow somebody else. Like, that's cool. And then the other part of it is, I've got people in our church that they don't believe in certain teachings that we have that are maybe the minor doctrines. Okay. That's fine. If you don't believe it, is it because you don't understand it? Whatever. Does that mean you're going to try to dissuade everybody else from what I'm doing? Because if you are, that's divisive. But if it's just a case that you don't understand it fully, or you disagree with it, but you still want to be here, you still want to be in unity, and it's a minor doctrine, well, cool. Let's just be part of this same community and serve the overall mission. And when it comes to the minor ones, we can agree to disagree and have some conversations along the way. And maybe we'll start to find a common ground. And I'm willing to work through those, just like in a comments section. If somebody asks a genuine question,
before your audience, before your followers get to it, because we pummel them. That right, team.
Well, and so here's the other thing that I will, yeah, and that's the other thing that I will do in both online and offline ministry is I don't have to answer everything. I don't have to respond to everything. And sometimes it's best if I don't respond to it and I wait to see, what does my community do? Did it even draw their attention? Do they even care? And if they care, did they just jump down their throat and chase them off themselves? And if they did, man, I'm cool with that.
Pummel.
So how about you when it comes to blocking? Like how do you do that? And have you had, I mean, you've obviously had those experiences of saying, hey, you need to go down the street. You need to go check them out.
Oh, yeah. So, echo time again. We have a kind of I hate to use a form, but I guess that's what it is. We kind of have an understanding, a basic contract in our church that you don't get on YouTube. So that's kind of where it breaks down. But in our church, if you disagree with something, just like you said, let's talk about it. Let's find out why you disagree. Maybe you know something I don't. Maybe right. You've got a revelation on a text or something that I've missed or overlooked or whatever. Or maybe, I don't have any children. That's a big thing. People will you just don't understand because you don't have kids, and one day you will understand. It's like, okay, is this a modern, parenting technique, or is this something biblical? And why are we fighting over something that even matters, or disagreeing over something that matters? Or let's talk. So we have a format for that. Open door. They can anything. Sky's the limit. Let's discuss it. But if it's like you were talking about, if it's in a public setting, so worship is going on, we're in one of our main services, and they get up and led by the Lord, air quotes here, and are disrupting service or drawing attention to themselves or causing division or speaking against or anything like that, or even during maybe the sermon part. If that happens, then we treat it as our responsibility to address that publicly. Right. So private things are addressed privately unless they want it to be a public matter. Then that can go before the elders and then before the congregation if it's deemed necessary. He's filling up his coffee, so I get a main shot. And if it's a public thing, then we deal with it publicly. So if you've got a shofar that you want to blow at the top of your lungs and you don't know how to play it, Pentecostal people understand this. I was baptized by fire with it. We'll whip out instruments that are not a part of worship, which is, I don't even care about that, but it gets to be distracting. And you've got a rainbow flyer and you're running around and skipping around the room, and you've got this interpretive dance that is, you might be a 70-year-old man and it's pretty seductive looking, and you're like, what in the world? What is happening? I don't know that this honors and glorifies Jesus, because all I can think is, I didn't know a man could move like that. Look at it go. So
run, Forrest.
Yeah, exactly. Those types of things, since it's done publicly, are corrected publicly.
Yeah.
Or if there is, hey, don't listen to this man, he's a false teacher, then we talk about it in public. And I can't tell you how many demonic manifestations and I'm not labeling it. I'm talking like guttural writhing and flopping or calling out and cursing, or we've seen over the years. It's a part of doing business, part of doing life and ministry publicly. And so trying to, like you said, once those things happen, addressing them if it's something that needs to be rebuked, we do it publicly, and then discussing with the congregation, okay, here's what's going on, here's what happens. Unless there's like a timely word and it's just a distraction, then we remove the distraction, deliver the timely word, and then go back afterwards and go, okay, like here's what happened, here's what's going on. Make sure we got the nugget. Okay, let's clean up. Here's what all that was about. Is it, everybody on the same page? Here we go. Let's rally. Now, where that breaks down, like that's our church runs like a top. If there's anybody coming in, it's got to be a pretty big distraction. Of course, now that I say that, enemy's going to heave this giant boulder.
Get ready for Sunday morning.
Get ready. Here we go. Demons coming out of the woodwork now. But on YouTube, which is where my primary, effort goes, content goes, you don't have the private and the public. You have the comment section. There's no private discourse where they can go, hey, listen, I don't understand. I disagree. I'm very frustrated. I'm hurt. I'm wounded. I've had bad leadership. I've had whatever. So I don't understand when you say this. And it's not ever phrased that way. Hurting people hurt people. So it's just, it always comes out with fire. And I hesitate. And sometimes I wrestle with this. I have to wait and see, is this person asking a heated question because of their wounding? Or are they just trying to mess people up? And so sometimes I'll give it a tick and see how the audience reacts. See if you or Vaughn or somebody hops in there and Dean, slaps them around a little bit, or if it's a genuine question, everybody's kind of hands off because they're busy that day or whatever's going on, and maybe it's a question. And I always approach it on YouTube as if it's a question, which is why you'll see trolls get a whole lot of love from me. I feed them. I feed them for a while till I discern whether they are.
Don't feed the trolls.
I feed them. I'll go back and forth.
Identify them. Don't feed them.
I will feed them for a while to find out who's behind this. Is this a hurt, wounded person who's seeking questions and they need encouragement and they need to know the truth? Yeah. Or at some point it becomes evident they are there to learn, they are truly seeking something, or they are there to rile you up and cause division and pull away as many as they can. At that point, they get shut down.
Right. Well, and here's something that just because I was saying don't feed the trolls, but that was more directed towards everybody else and not Jared. And to give you a perfect example of how I've been saying it's important to understand what your mission, what your calling is, what is the avenue you're supposed to be using. The lane that Jared, that you're typically operating in, you can see it from even the name of your church, it's grace. And so with that, grace, getting what you don't deserve, the trolls do not deserve that. Mm-hmm. Like if they're being trolls, if all they're trying to do is get a reaction out of you, they don't deserve a reaction. So I won't feed them. I won't give them grace, but I'm not about giving that grace to them. That's not what I'm doing. I'm all about encouraging them to live by faith. And a troll obviously has no intention of doing that. So deuces. Ain't nobody got time for that. Like I ain't putting up with you. But for you, because that is something that's on your heart, is to give them that up until a certain point, and you understand that. Mm-hmm. What I would say is for most Christians, most pastors, most content creators, don't do that, because all it's going to do when you feed them is they have gotten you off of mission. They have distracted you from what you're supposed to be doing. And you've got to be focused on what are you called to do? What are you supposed to do? Jared's got that focus, even in addressing the trolls, in feeding them a little bit. And I've seen you do this where you will give them a little feed. Like I'll sit there, and if I don't know if they're a troll, like I'm trying to identify them, I might respond if I'm not sure. And then if I'm sure, no, I'm done with you.
You're done with them.
I'm not going to respond to you anymore, because all you want to do is just argue. Like if you had a question, I'll answer the question, unless I can tell that the question is not a question. Like it's just a subtle way of coming in and trying to attack. So, but that's where I'm saying just understanding what you're called to do, what your mission is, and being so focused on that will help when it comes to blocking them, banning them, hiding them, removing them, kicking them out the front door, giving them the left or right hand of fellowship, whatever it is. It's like, that's where, yes, when you understand what's your mission, where's your focus supposed to be? If somebody's distracting you from that, recognize that, and that's when you need to shut it down immediately. Because if you don't, now you're getting off into the weeds. You're out of your lane. You're into the ditch. Now you're in the weeds. You're going to be tripping and falling over, and you have just delayed your progression and your effectiveness.
Well, you might even think about it. I have a different mindset on this. I think about it in terms of, I'm not trying to bring a troll to a saving knowledge of Jesus in one comment.
Correct. So, but you're trying to break down the hardness.
I am. I'm trying to transition them from maybe atheist or agnostic to open.
Yep.
I basically just one tick. If they're atheist, then I want to move them to agnostic. If they're agnostic, I want to move them over to just open to anything possibly. And if they're open, I'm gonna give them a little bit more. And I'm trying to determine where on the spectrum. If they're just causing fights and they are an out and out troll, and I'm gonna give them a little bit of whatever I can do to help, and then I'm deucing. Like,
yeah,
thank you.
Yep.
If it's not taken, if it's hard ground, then it gives me peace of mind to go, okay, then this is somebody else's, to till up in the future. But right now it's a little rocky. But if it has some potential, I'm gonna stick with it for a little bit. I'm gonna like a cat with a ball of yarn. I'm gonna play that thing around.
Play with it. Yeah.
I'm gonna see where this thing
goes. You're gonna flesh it out and see. Okay, is there something here?
Now here's the thing, though.
But from the moment that you realize that your efforts are ineffective,
yep,
you're pulling the ripcord. And you're
it's
done.
Just like whenever we were talking about at church. If you don't jive with me, and I'm not somebody who, and this is a God thing, guys. If God hasn't given a respect and an authority, that person's willing to submit to or finds attractive, then what are we doing here? There's no real reason for them to listen to me. Why would they? And I don't blame them. Press on. It breaks down. I have the ability to do that because I have a smaller church. I have a smaller YouTube channel. If you're talking about hundreds of comments a day, you can't play with the yarn as much.
Right.
But right now, I'm gonna play with the yarn, see what comes unraveled.
Yeah. So that might be kind of going back to what I was saying. If I'm hearing what you and I are both saying is, if you've got the time, if you're still on mission, if you're still focused, and you're able to engage with them in a productive manner, do it. If it's not productive.
And let me add to that.
And
don't get me wrong. I'm just like the rest of us. I'm anticipating a God moment. I'm anticipating God putting a nugget. For instance, the last one, the last video, the guy hops on and he's going back and forth, and I'm praying and I'm asking the Lord, okay, give me something that goes behind the lines, and drops the nugget. That's only something that that's not whipped up by some charismatic person, like that's just you, and it can't be attributed to anybody else. I asked the question. I don't know whether it hit or not. I asked the question and the conversation was over.
Right.
I am hoping that the question hits and, is personal knowledge that only the creator of the universe knows. And so therefore he knows he's real and it's going on. If not, he can say crazy pants, whatever. I knew, whatever. Nothing lost here. Let's move on.
Yep.
But I have to stop there and say, I am just like the rest of you. I'm hoping that God's going to give a nugget that's going to break the chains off this guy, and here we go.
Right.
Because if not, then what are we doing here?
Yeah. If God's not in it, and then maybe that's the biggest summary of this is, if God's not in it, we shouldn't be about it.
Yeah, we shouldn't be about it.
But is he in it or not?
Isn't that the balance though, Josh? Because we're trying to figure out, what is he in? Is he in this? And sometimes it's a clear voice of the Lord, and we walk in it and we're being obedient, and it's awesome. We get to see everything fall into place. Those are those rare moments in life where you're like, yeah. But a lot of the time, I have to admit, it's like, are you over here, Lord? Are you moving here? Nope. Okay.
Right.
Is it over here, Lord? Is this where? Okay. We're just gonna. What about here? Oh, okay. This is where it is.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Breakthrough. Here we go.
Yep. Let's get a couple comments in here. Dean Lentini saying 1,000, 10,000%. Sometimes it's clear that someone is looking to make my channel their platform through crazy long comments, and I just don't respond to those folks. Here's my suggestion for crazy long comments. Go in your YouTube studio. I believe it's in settings, and then in the community tab. Get out of here, dog.
Which one's that one? Is that Flower? Flower. Hush. We talk
crazy long comments in YouTube studio, in settings, and then in the community tab, you can actually hold potentially inappropriate comments, and anything that is a a book that they've tried to write. It just goes in there. Nobody sees it. You don't have to worry about any of it.
Don't hate on the long comment, people. Please.
Hate on the long comment, people.
Listen, we have voice to text rolling, and we're just thinking. Okay, we're thinking out loud, and we're watching your video, and we've had some thoughts, and we just want to share those things.
That's where you take John's approach, and you do 15 comments rather than just one. And most of the long comments,
your long comment thing then, because with me, he does a long comment. There's separate sections, but it's all one comment.
So, well, maybe your setting is different from my setting. I don't know. But I will also note that most of the long comments that I'm getting, and maybe these are like Dean, the long comments are typically where somebody has taken 18 different Bible verses completely out of context and posted them in the comments section.
Boy, those are the best.
Yeah. Which he also says, if somebody's being rude, I just block now.
Yeah.
I don't have time to get into which ones are misunderstood and whatnot. Rudeness and condensation.
Condensation? Condescension?
Condescension. There we go.
Condescension, yeah.
Now my English is... that word is the line for me. And yes.
Say, man, if somebody's being rude, and particularly to my audience... I'm done. That's where I come unglued,
right.
And that's
the pastoral part of us coming out, where it's like,
man, you want to drive out a wolf? My goodness,
yep, for sure.
I will ban you for life.
Jeffrey Calling saying, I had to do that a couple days ago. I was preaching about prayers. Someone disagreed with me. I gave him all the scriptures I can think of. He's still not agreeing with me. Deuces.
Yeah, man.
Go somewhere else.
What is that? What is that about us? I mean, I know it gets lumped into Christianity, but like, why do we fight so much about these things? It's like, why is it my battle cry to hop on your channel? Hey, Diana, hop on your channel and go, here's all the reasons where you're wrong. Like,
yeah. Wait,
hold on. Swipe. That's all I had to do. But I'm going to write 3 paragraphs. Saw that troll the other day, Jared. Yeah. Hey,
for sure.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
Dean says, I would much rather deal with 5 decent-sized comments than long ones that are copied and pasted from their troll books. And I love the term troll because they're like lurking in the shadows of the comments under the bridge of the path that we are creating, just seeking the moment to jump out and pounce us. And it's like, I ain't giving you no food. Get out of here.
I'll feed you. Come over here.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's always one comment, but multiple sections, is what he's saying. Yeah. Augie's saying no patience here. I just plain ban them if they're being a smooth face. I like it.
I am taking that. Smooth.
And he says Josh does multiple comments back, though, which I do. I like doing multiple comments. It's easy for me to address one after the other. And occasionally, I'll do multiple comments inside one comment, multiple answers, occasionally. But I prefer to do...
One at a time?
One at a time, unless like the other day, I think you had commented on, and I think I just answered one comment.
You did 1 to my 5. I'm boosting the algorithm, my good sir.
But there were only like 2 things that I was actually going to respond to. So it was like,
respond to everything.
I'm not responding to everything. I'll give it a heart and then I'll...
Logan's hair, first of all, I think we can all agree that Logan's hair is next level.
Yeah.
Next level.
Yeah.
Are you going to try and do it?
I think so, yeah. Might as well.
That's crazy, man.
Might as well try to see if I can pull off John Wick. And John is saying it's because I don't like the multi-part questions that he does that. This is true. So, hey, here goes into this next little question that Dean was asking. How do we keep people engaged? I keep people engaged by trying to encourage them to ask questions and to have a conversation outside. My Sunday sermons, my YouTube videos, it's not meant to be a monologue. It's meant to be a dialogue.
Yep.
Some people don't have time for that. Totally get it. Don't worry about it if you don't. Others, maybe you want to. And because of oftentimes in church, I'm preaching a sermon. It's like, I thought this was about this. And all of a sudden, there's somebody that doesn't want to talk about 1 Thessalonians 4:11. They want to talk about my son's hair. And I'm like, cool. If that's all you got out of it, let's have a conversation about it. Aren't those glorious locks?
Magnificent.
Hasn't he pulled off Kevin Sorbo and Prince Charming very well?
It's a little distracting. I mean, look at the kid.
Right. Or even like in the latest vlog, I get a comment from Wayne Riz, and he's like, how many but first coffee signs do you have? I'm like, I don't know. Do I have multiple? So I had to go walk through the house, and apparently I had 2, and they both made an appearance in the vlog. And I'm like, oh, well, he doesn't like coffee. I know that about him. And it's something that even around coffee, we can have a conversation. It is a relational point, even though I love it and he loathes it. It's like we can still relate on those things. And that's the thing in church. Like, oftentimes people aren't catching exactly what I said. Sometimes they want to have a conversation and it had nothing to do with anything I said, but it was just something that was on their heart. But I try to make myself approachable. Again, going back to what we were talking about with Jesus, I'm trying to make sure that they can come up to me. They can have a conversation. If they've got questions, ask. I may or may not answer it in the way, the time, the manner that you want. I will eventually get to it, Lord willing. If it's obviously a troll and it's distracting, ain't nobody got time for that. But for the community, I do respond. I do talk to them. I do have those conversations, and I will probably put in more time than I ought to. Now, as that scales, Lord willing, my plan is going to be similar to what I would be doing with church. With church, I'm typically just talking to the people right then and right there, immediately before or immediately after service. With YouTube videos, I'm even kind of doing that now, where if somebody leaves a comment on a video that's a year old, I'm typically not responding to it because I haven't even thought about that in so long. My mind is not on there. Sorry. Now, occasionally I'll go back through all the comments, see if there was something I missed that I needed to respond to, but typically not. That's the only way I could foresee scaling it, I can only have these conversations right now, like when it's still fresh on the mind. And I think that creates the engagement of show up and then let's talk about this. Like, here's what's going on through my mind. Here's what I think God's dealing with me on, and maybe he's trying to encourage y'all on. Mm-hmm. So let's just have that quick conversation. Let's do it right here, right now. And if you don't have time for it, all right, we'll have another one next week. It's like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that engagement, both physical and digital? I mean, how do you keep the community engaged?
I think it's pretty much what you said. And I think it goes back to the first part of the question. I think it's the authenticity. I think we are pushing. I'm just going to talk for a second. So if you guys agree with me, this is word vomit as it's coming to me, but I think we're pushing the envelope on being transparent, walking things out in front of people. I think it's not the norm to say, hey, I screwed up a bunch this week. Here it is documented in video, or here it is, from a pulpit of here's what I messed up on, and here's what the Lord's challenging me in, and here's what he's showing, and here's what I feel like he's saying to the body at a greater level. Here's what he said, to the church at Corinth, however many years ago, and here's how it applies today. And I think that we're living those things out, and I think it draws people in because they're having their own stories. They're walking out their own life. And hopefully whenever I'm making a vlog, we'll use the vlog side. Hopefully when I'm making the vlog, I mean, it is my life, but I think what people are getting out of it is how they relate to it. Because certain people like the animals, certain people like, the different characters that are in there, or some people like to go to town. Some people want me to stay and pontificate in the office. And yeah, different people relate differently, but it's in their faith walk as well, because it's like wherever those God touch points hit them. And it's just like in a sermon for anybody who's a pastor out there. You preach, you deliver the word. You had something in mind, and you were just trying to be as authentic as possible with what the real-time revelation of God, and the written revelation of God is saying, to us. And you may have had an intent and purpose for it, but the person listening has a different one. And then they get to come up and dialogue with you. And I think that's what makes it I think that's what makes the church. I think that's what makes thriving communities is we're assuming that our audience is living the same or a similar life of faith, at least when it comes to faith communities. They're walking this out and they get the notes, they get the homework of somebody else who's walking it out. And I don't know
Yeah.
how people see us, whether they see us, well, since we're pastors and we're set up on a pedestal or whatever. We were talking about that the other day at the pastoral prayer time. We're like, the different ways that churches honor their pastors. Some of them, in the Church of Christ streams, they come from the congregation when they go to preach because they want the people to know that we're just one of you, and
Yeah.
we're just been asked and tasked for the day to come up and preach. And then some congregations, they want you to sit on it's like a near throne, because you are the man of God anointed to bring the word for today, and the man of God sits in this seat because we want to covenant together to honor you. And we're just talking about how crazy that is. But you're assuming that you've got a group of people around you or who are interested in that because they're looking at the notes of somebody who's walking it out as well. So in church and online, I think it's the same thing. I think we're looking at one another's lives and sharing that together and going, isn't God amazing? And I think the people who are attracted to that bond together. We become community, and we go after the Lord together and other people. And the people who are like, this is stupid, this is boring, doesn't connect, it's not time for them.
Right. Yeah, and there's something in there, and you started to touch on that. The other part of what Dean was asking with the transparency. How transparent are we to be? And I think because of us being vloggers. And we
might
format,
swing a little far on the pendulum.
Yeah, we may be in there. I think that even the transparency, I think, can come down to knowing your role, knowing your lane, knowing what God has called you to do. How transparent does He want you to be? And some of that, like I have seen my transparency, and people, they talk about it. I mean, a lot. I think even the recent video, somebody was saying, "Hey, thanks for being transparent. Thanks for showing this." And it's like, that's me. Like, that's just what I do. I've even talked to our church, and the one feedback that I get from a lot of people is they just love how transparent I am. Now,
have you had anyone hate it?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had people hate it, and they say, I don't think you should be sharing that much. I don't think that that's godly.
Close.
And I'm like, well, then obviously I'm not the right guy for you. Go find somebody else. That's just a little bit more prim, a little bit more proper, and isn't as open and revealing. I have also found, like in my preaching, I just tell on myself all the time. And part of that is because I start looking at people like Paul and Peter, and they talk about their failures and their faults all the time. The Apostle Paul even referring to himself as being the chief sinner. It's like, oh, all the sins, I'm the chief one among you, just so you know.
Right.
And I kind of take that, and I've noticed that that's kind of where my sweet spot is, of just using my shortcomings and my failures, because it's that whole, Yoda, Luke Skywalker trying to, model that behavior. It's like, if I'm going to be the Yoda, maybe I need to actually help you be Luke. And one of the best ways is to show you by example. The Apostle Paul even saying, follow me as I follow Christ. He's falling as he's following. And it's like, I need to show people that. And when they see, oh, yeah, here's how Josh messed up, and here's how he corrected it. He did this to follow Christ, and that corrected that shortcoming. It corrected the failure. Because I'm open and honest with that, I will. Now, I will share my faults. I'm not going to be transparent with my family's faults or other people's faults without getting permission from them. Because I'm okay being open and real and vulnerable and transparent. I mean, obviously, to a certain degree, there's always going to be a little bit of a line on that. And that's just got to come with the Holy Spirit wisdom on there of saying, okay, is this sharing too much? Am I being too open, too real, to the point that this will be more of a distraction than an illustration? Like, are people going to get hung up on this one thing? And sometimes it's still sharing the same story, but not the specifics of the story.
Yep.
And that's where that's been a trial and error, I will say, because there have been times that I've shared more specifics than I ought to have, and I had people that they were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And why not? And then they explain why. I hadn't thought about that before. And then I start to see how it played out, and it's like, you know what? You were right. I was wrong. Oops. And then, hey, now I've got another illustration. So it's like,
yeah,
those are the kind of things that I've done just to be open. To show that transparency. And because of being vlogger and vlog pastor and pastor, it works. Again, the way I am in person is the way I am online. I'm just going to be me. I'm going to share it. If you like it, great. If you don't, peace. Go find somewhere else.
Yeah, man.
Augie says, authenticity and transparency are two separate things. Absolutely. We are called to be authentic, like Paul, who said he had a thorn in his side. That's authentic. Transparent Paul would have said what it was. Yeah, and I mean, I guess we're into semantics on this, where how do we define transparent, and how do we define authenticity? To me, the authenticity is being genuine, real, and honest. The transparency to me is peeling back the layers and showing them what's a little bit deeper. Because I think about transparency, like if I'm creating a thumbnail in a video, like even on the thumbnail on these, I don't know if you guys noticed, but you look down in the right corner and it says Vlog Pastors on there. It's the little logo, but on the thumbnails, it's not very prominent because I have made it partially transparent. And so I've let it be seen through, but you can still see what's on the outside. And that's maybe how I do transparency with both physical and digital ministry, is I want to peel back that layer. I want to let them see through what's here and in, but to a certain level. Now, where that is, or are we going like 75 transparent or 100% transparent?
See,
I don't know.
To me, that's a great illustration, because the dial is subjective. Mm-hmm. And if you start creeping on, 75, 80% on that transparency side, you're going to have some people squawking. If you dial it back, you're going to have other people squawking, saying it's not transparent enough. And it's like, I struggle with that, and in a good way. I don't know that there's a perfect level of transparency or authenticity or whatever. I just know that I want to, in me, I want to push for as much openness and vulnerability as possible, because that's where I find a broken and contrite heart. Yeah. When I've been before the Lord, I can look at myself and go, yeah, I really messed up. Everybody knows about it. You saw it before it even happened, but like, here it is. And it's all out there on the table. And I find a safe place to rebuild from there. I find that comforting, and I try to pass that on to others. Yep. The problemo is on one side, you have, you could walk into my church today and say, do you remember the brownie sermon? Not because bite a brownie or anything like that, but do you remember the brownie sermon? Everyone who was there in that day remembers the brownie sermon. It's the most effective sermon that's ever, past the darts, where we shot darts at people and talked about, spiritual giftings and stuff like that. That beyond that is the brownie sermon. I overshared and a half. It was a vulnerable time where we'd moved in with my parents. We were building the house, and so living in close quarters. Mm-hmm. Whenever you have adult kids now who've moved back into the home, which conversation we were having the other day, Joshua, moved back into the home, there was friction there. And I was upset with my stepdad, because back in the day when I was a 16-year-old kid, this did not pay off long term, mind you, I would eat everything in the house before he would, and him vice versa for me, because it was just we didn't have a whole lot of money, so it was a competition for food. And there was like a thing. There was an established stigma. You get to it first, or I get to it first. By golly, we're not leaving anything left over, because there's not going to be enough. It's weird. It was bad. Not gonna make up for that. Not gonna make. But we moved back in, and my mom the night before had made brownies. for the kids, because we'd move back in and we're going to celebrate or whatever. And so she'd made brownies, and I'm so excited about these brownies. I'm excited that we've moved on past, having to eat everything in the house, and there's an abundance mentality, and here we go. And I wake up the next morning and the brownies are gone. And I am so mad about these brownies. And so I'm telling the church how frustrated I was, and how, like, I know he's done it again. It strikes again. All my childhood issues come up, and just the vulnerability to that. And my mom comes walking out, and I just venting on her, and she says, "I ate the brownies. Got up last night, had a hanker for brownies. My house, my brownies, made them, And it's like,
right.
Oh no.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to make some more. Like, this isn't a thing." And it just was crushing. So everybody remembers the brownie sermon.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the equation, so that's like be open and vulnerable. It really affected people. God spoke. But on the other side of the equation, a couple, I guess it's been over a year ago now, Jesse and I were doing this State of the Union thing. And I had this really great idea where I was like, we're going to share our finances, because what's more open and transparent than saying, look, here's where we're struggling. Here's what we have, every last dime. Here's what we're doing as far as trying to get out of these holes and these ruts. Here's what we make. Here's what goes out. Here's our generosity. Here's what we felt like the Lord wanted us to target first. And I wanted to put all that on the table, and my friends erupt and they go, "No, you cannot do this. This is going to cause more of a stumbling block than being beneficial." And I thought, yeah, whatever. They're just not ready for this level of
I'm laughing because I remember these conversations that we had.
Yeah, and I'm like, Josh is not ready for this. Whoever else will not. Yeah. But you for sure, since you said something. He's not ready for this. We're doing it because this is the direction I want to go in. And my father-in-law calls me up and he's like, "What are you thinking? This is a bad idea. This is going to cause more division." And even still, I'm like, "Nah, I ain't ready for this." And my wife says, "Hey, listen, sweetie, you need to bring this before the Lord, because I don't know that this is going to be beneficial. I mean, you may feel better about it, but I don't know that this is going to help or hurt." And when my wife chimed in there, it was like, okay, I overshared. So it's a balance, man. I've got family who thinks I tell way too much, expose way too much. They don't want to be around it. Friends who don't want any part of the cameras and the vlogging and that sort of thing. But then I've got others who are like, "Yeah, let's do this. We're making a dent in this world,
Right.
We're being transparent."
Yeah, and maybe one of the things that, like, I'm thinking back on what Augie's saying, with the authenticity and transparency being two different things. I think for me, when I combine authenticity with transparency, I get a relatability that I can't get otherwise. I'm not saying that it's the only way to do it, but I'm saying that I have found it most effective when I am authentic to who I am, who God's called me to be, and I'm transparent, pulling back the layers, letting people see deeper than what's on the surface. And then they're able to relate to that because they can start to see. Like, I start sharing my motives. Like, I did that just the other day in a sermon, and I thought, oh, man, like, I hadn't planned it. It was one of those where all of a sudden Holy Spirit's throwing it on mine, and I'm thinking, okay, this is great because I don't want to say this. What are they going to think of me? People are going to be upset. People are going to be mad about this. And I'm like, whatever. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But what wound up happening was I just shared, like, there are moments where I'm in the dumps. I don't want to talk to anybody. I definitely don't want anybody to pray for me. I want to wallow in my own self-pity and misery. And so when my wife's like, "Oh, I think we need to pray for you." And I'm like, "No, you get away from me. I don't want you to pray for me." And then she calls my grandma, and my grandma calls me, and I just hit end. And I'm like, "No, I don't want to talk to grandma because she's going to pray for me. And then I'm going to start to feel better. And I don't want to feel better." And then you know what happens?
Depression is
Mom just comes over. Mom doesn't care. She ain't calling. Actually, she did call me, and then I still hung up on her. And then she just walks through the door. She's like, "Hey, we need to talk." And I was like, "I don't want to." She's like, "I don't care." But I said that, and I'm sharing that with people, and everybody could relate to those moments. Mm-hmm. And it was a freedom that I saw in people where the wall was breaking down. It's like, so I'm not an unrepentant heathen for having these thoughts. I was like, well, I mean, if you are, well, I am too. So it's just like, no, I mean, we all go through those, but the important thing is then recognize it, move beyond it. And that's where me being authentic and transparent, it creates that relatability that all of a sudden it seems like people are more willing to hear about what I've done to get beyond that. What is the answer to that problem? What is the solution? Or at least the solution that I found. And that's where I think there winds up being definitely gold in the hills of that transparency. But again, it's a sliding scale, you know, and that's the hard thing. I think about Photoshop, that sliding scale of transparency, and just adjusting it a little bit makes all the difference. 1 or 2% makes all the difference. And that can make the difference of whether or not we are effective or not effective. And the only thing that I've found is, man, it's a test, it's a trial, it's an error. And over the years, I've found that with both, at least with physical ministry, with the digital ministry, I can't say that there's anything that I've posted on the YouTube channel that I have just blocked or like hidden videos or taken videos down. But there have been videos that I haven't published. So I've created them and then I've watched them. And then it's like, nah, I think I went too deep on there and I just can't do it. And you and I were even talking about a video that
Did you finish that one?
No. No.
He's like, no, we don't talk about that one.
We were talking about a video that I've been wanting to work on, but it is vulnerable. It is transparent and I'm not okay with it. I think it needs to be made, but I'm just not okay with it yet. And so it is.
Let me just throw in a promo before. This thing is raw. It needs to be made. Like, it needs to be made yesterday. It needs to be completed and published. It is jaw-droppingly raw. And it's that tension, at least to this point in the video, where I don't know that there's resolution to it yet.
There's
and
not.
if he leaves it without resolution, I mean, it's one of those videos where, you know, maybe YouTube picks it up, maybe it doesn't, but it's going to shake somebody. It shook me.
YouTube won't pick it up. Haven't we already established that anything that I make that we have decided that this is gold and this is what people need to hear, it never hits. It just never hits.
But somebody's going to watch this video and it's going to change their life, man.
Well, you say that, but maybe nobody will ever watch the video because it'll never get made. You're whetting the appetite, and it's like, I don't know as it'll ever get made. And again, that's because of that. It's because of the authenticity and the transparency. Yes, it's relatability, but where's that transparent scale? And because I haven't, in my mind, even before pressing record on all of it, some of it's been recorded, but even before that, it's like, I don't know where that scale is, and I don't know how much I'm willing or not willing to share. And so it just, I mean, it is what it is. And it's so much to the point that you guys don't know. I've deleted a lot of footage from this that I have recorded, and then it's like, no, it's never going to see the light of day, and I've deleted it.
It's amazing. Yeah. Of course, I tend towards the, you know, one side of the scale. So it is, it's so good, man. I remember going
through. It's a great idea. I don't know if it'll ever happen.
I think I would cry. I really would. I think I would. I think that would be a disservice.
I've almost cried just thinking about making it, so take that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But man, like, I remember seeing it going, that's how you start the video. And then I'd watch a little bit more and be like, no. That's how you start the video. It's like, or at least how you were, you know, laying it out for us. Oh my goodness.
Anyhow. Transparency. I don't know if that answers any of your questions, Dean, but hopefully you guys found something encouraging out of this. It tried to give some things. I want to wrap up a couple other comments here that I saw before we dismiss and bid you adieu. Let's see. It was Dean saying, as a guy who sits at a desk and lectures on my channel, I have a different take on vulnerability, but this is really helpful stuff.
No. I disagree, Dean. You can feel it. I noticed this the other day. I was talking about spiritual gifts. I think that's the last video that came out that's public right now. I'm talking about spiritual gifts, and I could feel that desire to recoil just a little bit, to hedge my bets, to not fully talk about it because it's not palatable to the entire audience or all of Christianity because we're still kind of, warring these things out. And it's like, no, we need to talk about it. You're gonna feel those things as you're sitting down and you're recording a video and you feel so led, to go in a direction. And it's not that it's like a spirit demanded thing, but you are going to have a meter that you can kind of dial up or dial down as far as how much you want to disclose as to your beliefs or your background or your family or what you've walked through. And you're going to feel it, man. And as you put yourself out there, I know I'm on one side of the scale, but I think the further you go into it and just say what's on your heart, the more people rally around you and find a, for lack of a better term, man, find a leader that they can rally behind and go, yeah, in this field, you are a guru, you are an expert, you've put yourself out there, and I'm ready to follow that kind of boldness and faith. You're gonna feel it, man, even from the desk.
Yep. Diana saying, I'm just waiting for the Lord to come back and pop up with a switch pod and a vlogging camera and say, let's do this. She says, I jest, but that's how I like to view the Bible at times.
Yeah.
What if this life instruction manual was a long vlog? Take a different look on the stories shared and those in the Word inspired to write. Yep. I mean, I've heard Trey Van Camp talk about how, King David is the OG vlogger. I disagree with him. I think Moses is the OG vlogger because the first 5 books of the Bible were written by him.
Sure.
And he told other stories and then his own stories. But I do get what he says because, like David alone, he was really sharing a lot of the intimate details and talk about transparent.
Moses was like a feature film. He's like a feature filmmaker. Yeah. Everything's dramatic and huge and large.
Very cinematic in that approach.
Cinematic scale, and David's like daily vlogging.
David's daily vlogging, then he's like, oh, so, I was dancing around naked the other day. Just like...
Shot in 4K.
All right. Maybe that was more than we needed to know. Thanks for being so transparent. Anywho. All right. I think that's all we got for you guys. I got nothing else. Jared, you got any parting words?
Nothing.
All right. Well, I guess until next time, stay blessed. Enjoy God's best. Have a fantastic day.